In our last video, we discussed the beginning of Bangladesh crisis. Indira Gandhi realized that international opinion had to be educated and won over to the cause of Bangladesh and made aware of India's predicament in regard to the refugees and how they were placing an unbearable burden on India, endangering its economic and political stability. This, she hoped, would make other countries sympathetic to India or at least not hostile to it should there be need for military intervention. But it was not that simple. There was a lot of international politics involved in the crisis. Today, we are going to discuss the international situation during Bangladesh crisis. Let us first discuss the position of United States and China. In April 1971, the Chinese Prime Minister wrote to the Pakistani President deploring the gross interference by India in the internal problems of his country. He dismissed the resistance as the work of a handful of persons who want to sabotage the unification of Pakistan. He assured Yahya Khan that should the Indian expansionists dare to launch aggression against Pakistan, the Chinese government and people will support the Pakistani government and people in their just struggle to safeguard state sovereignty and national independence. In July 1971, United States declared neutrality, indirectly backing Pakistan. But why? Lot of water had passed under the bridge. In the first week of July 1971, Kissinger visited New Delhi, where concerned Indian officials talked his ear off about the crisis. From there, he went to Pakistan and secretly flew to Beijing. Kissinger's secret trip to China was a success, and announced as so by Nixon on 15th July 1971. To the surprise of absolutely everyone, the American president declared that Washington was now going to normalize relations with Beijing. The middleman in this truce was the Yahya Khan, president of Pakistan. All through 1970, he had been passing messages between the two powers and gaining influence in both capitals. When the East Pakistan crisis broke out in March 1971, the US and China were deep in their secret negotiations. Immediately after the beginning of the crackdown, Kissinger had advised his president to not put pressure on Yahya. He was simply too valuable to antagonize over little violence in some far-off corner of the world. Nixon had wholeheartedly agreed, issuing a directive to his people, "Don't squeeze Yahya," with "don't" underlined 3 times. Now that Nixon had opened up to China, he needed to show China that he was capable of hard decisions, just like the Chinese. What kind of message would it send Beijing if he abandoned their mutual friend Yahya in the hour of need? Yahya's efforts as middleman were bearing fruits. President Nixon had many prejudices. He had a deep dislike of one country and a sentimental attachment to the leader of the other. He told Kissinger that the Indians are no goddamn good. In Nixon's opinion, Yahya Khan was a decent, reasonable, and honorable man. As Kissinger somewhat despairingly told a colleague, the president has a special feeling for President Yahya. One cannot make policy on that basis, but it is a fact of life. Nixon expressed his prejudices forcefully. Speaking to his staff in August 1971, he said that while the Pakistanis are straightforward, sometimes extremely stupid, the Indians are more devious, sometimes so smart that we fall for their line. These prejudices clearly signify why United States was tilted towards the Pakistan during Bangladesh crisis. On her November visit, Mrs. Gandhi had 2 meetings with President Nixon. Kissinger had the impression that this was a classic dialogue of the diff. Nixon said that the US would not be a party to overthrow of Yahya and warned India that the consequences of military action were incalculably dangerous. Let us now discuss the position of Soviet Russia and other countries. As India drew apart from one superpower, it was coming closer to the other. Indian hostility to China dated back to the border conflict of 1959-62. Soviet hostility was more recent, a product of rivalry for leadership of the world communist movement. Mao Zedong had spoken sneeringly of Russian revisionism. The armies of two sides had clashed on the Uri River in 1969. India and the Soviet Union did not touch one another at any point, but each had a very long border with China. A closer alliance was in the interest of both. For 2 years, the Soviets had been offering India a treaty of friendship, a signal to the world of their tentative closeness. So far, Mrs. Gandhi had played it cool, reluctant to antagonize the United States or right-wingers within India. But Nixon's opening to China changed this. Barely a month after the American announcement, India and Soviet Union signed a treaty of friendship. India had finally gained at least one country in its corner. But did this treaty mean allying in war or just the friendship for peaceful development? Moscow saw the treaty as a small step towards building friendship with New Delhi, not an alliance. But paranoid White House interpreted it as an open declaration for war. Only a month after the treaty was signed, the Soviet embassy in New Delhi ran an ad in an Indian newspaper explaining that the treaty was not about security but only about peace and stability. Translation: we are not going to war for you. Moscow had no interest in getting embroiled in some war in South Asia, whatever it might be. By the late summer of 1971, the axes of alliance on the subcontinent were pretty clear to the world. On the one side, there was West Pakistan with China and the United States. On the other, East Pakistan with India and the Soviet Union. New Delhi dispatched senior cabinet ministers to countries in Europe and Africa to speak there of unfolding tragedy and India's efforts to manage it. The Prime Minister wrote to the world leaders urging them to rein in Pakistan army. In the last week of September 1971, the Prime Minister travelled to the Soviet Union. The next month, she visited a series of Western cities, ending in the capital of the free world. Everywhere, she spoke of deepening crisis in East Pakistan. India's campaign received a very positive response from the media, the intelligentsia, and students in the West and ultimately from the West European governments besides the people and the governments of the Soviet Union and other European communist countries. Convinced from the beginning that a war between India and Pakistan on the Bangladesh issue and the problem of the refugees was inevitable, Indira Gandhi was prepared for it by November end, but she was reluctant to take action first, even though the Indian army was ready, and in fact 4th December had been designated as the day the Indian army forces would directly undertake the liberation of Bangladesh. But at this stage, Yahya Khan obliged Indira Gandhi by pushing the button first. In our next video, we will discuss the India-Pakistan war for the liberation of Bangladesh. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and comment because discussion is solution. For more discussions, please subscribe our channel.